Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and much appreciated you guys checking the video out and making some time to watch it. And guys, today we're going to have a discussion on the coldest water that you can still catch topwater fish on. I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions around this, and there's also a lot of variables that surround how cold water bass will bite a topwater lure in. So I'm going to give you guys what I've learned from my experience, and I think it's going to surprise everybody a little bit out there. And also guys, since we are talking about cold water, that means winter is just around the corner. I want to invite everybody to please check out our winter Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns. If you guys are going to need some good spots for jerk baiting and stuff for your wintertime fishing, this is a great resource. Gives you 40 GPS waypoints to begin your search at. So I'll put the Fish the Moment lake map breakdown link in the description of this video if you guys would like to check it out. So much appreciated. Okay guys, when you're talking about cold water, as far as how cold that the fish are going to still hit a jerk or a topwater in, there's two different scenarios for cold water, and there's the fish react differently to that. You've got the cold water that comes with late winter and like into where spring is just beginning, but the water is still pretty cold. And then you've got this time of year, the fall time of the year, where we're moving into winter. At the time of filming this video, it's the first part of November. Water temperatures are starting to drop. So there's two different windows as far as the coldest the fish will hit a topwater. And usually those windows last about a month, it seems like to me, based upon the weather patterns you have. Now the fish are going to react differently as far as the temperatures and the conditions that they hit those topwaters in. That's what I want to cover in this video. So I want to cover the late winter and I want to cover the early winter like we're in right now. So first of all, let's talk about right now. Then we'll talk about late winter and the pre-spawn and that type of stuff. One of the things that you're going to find out as far as the sort of like the limit as far as the coldest water that fish will hit a topwater in, it has to do with a couple different things. It has to do with the type of lake you're fishing, the water visibility in that lake, and where the bait fish are going to be as far as the bait fish. And it also has to do with how quick the water has cooled down into that colder range out there. So let's get into a little bit about this. If you have, say for example, like right now, say if the water temperatures are in the upper 50s, right around 60, and you get a bitterly cold front that comes through, like we had a front that came through a couple days ago where it got down 17, 18 degrees. Now what you're gonna have is you're gonna have water temperatures in that shallow water that cool down super fast. It's like 17 degrees for a couple nights in a row. It's gonna cool that surface temperature down, if you're in real shallow water, down maybe 10 degrees. So you're gonna, in essence, a little bit, you're gonna get sort of a fake reading because you may have a water temperature in the back end of the cove, in a cove in real shallow water. It may have cooled down from 60 to 50 degrees overnight, yet the main lake still may be in the upper 50s. So from this standpoint, the type of weather pattern you have leading towards that water temperature getting colder has a big impact to play on it. Let's say, for example, you've had stable weather for a week, and the temperatures, when I mean stable, you haven't had any big fronts come in, but the temperatures are gradually getting cooler and cooler every night. And then after this slow progression of cooler nights that was not brought upon by some type of a strong weather pattern or weather front coming in, and then when that water temperature starts to finally get down around 50 degrees from the slow progression down into 50, and the main lake starts to be the same water temperature as the back of the coves, that's when it gets a little bit too cold. And once that water temperature has stabilized on the main lake, in the creeks and the back of the coves to about 52, 53 degrees, guys, your topwater bites are going to go way downhill once that water temperature starts to stabilize throughout the lake in the low 50s. Now, if the water temperature has dropped down, like I said, into the low 50s because maybe you got a big honking cold front that moved in and maybe you got some snow out there, it can be a great time to catch them. I've caught a bunch of fish in water temperatures that were in the low to mid 50s that drop down to that temperature range real quick out there. Let's say, for example, you get a bad front. Well, let me give you a prime example. I fished a tournament at Lake of the Ozarks about 20 years ago. And when it was a middle November tournament, And when I got up there, the water temperatures were, upper 50s when we got there, maybe the first part of November, but upper 50s water temperature, because we had sort of an unseasonably warm period leading up to that. And while I was at the tournament, we had a major cold front come through. The temperatures dropped 35 degrees. The first day of the tournament, it was snowing. It was 30 some degrees, and those water temperatures had dropped down from 57, 58, 59 degrees down to 52, 53. And I smacked them, guys, on a buzzbait. I caught 20 pounds the first 2 days of the tournament in like 52, 53 degree water on a buzzbait. But the reason I did that is because those fish were shallow and the main lake was still warm, even though the shallows were warm. Now, if I would have went up there 3 weeks later and it stabilized all over the lake, those fish wouldn't have been up there and I'd have never caught them in that buzzbait. So a lot of it has to do, again, with the weather patterns. But basically, the point of the video, as far as how cold they're going to hit them in the early winter, like we are now, is once that water stabilizes in the low 50s, you're not going to be catching any fish. And by the way, before we get into the springtime, the late winter, the two best cold water top waters, number one is the buzzbait. You cannot beat a big buzzbait. This is that megabass Jamaican boa, and the reason why you want a big buzzbait with a big blade is you can reel it really slow. And that's a big key in catching cold water, topwater fish when that water's in the mid 50s like that, is you gotta throw these big buzz baits with the big blades, with heavy line, keep your rod tip high, where just blub, 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 blub. Just reel it just fast enough to keep it where it doesn't go into the surface. You don't wanna go blub, 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 like that. You wanna barely keep the thing moving. And that's why I use 25-pound test Seaguard Vizix line. Usually I'm using my flipping stick. I'm holding that rod tip way high, and that way I can reel it real slow and just barely get those blades moving. When I caught those two 20-pound bags at Lake of the Ozarks, I swear the blades were barely moving. It's like sometimes they'd even drop under the water a little bit, but those fish would just come up and suck it in like in slow motion. And then the other cold water topwater is a walking bait, like a Xeraspook, or this is the Megabass Diamante. A walking bait is also a good topwater lure, especially if you got a little bit clearer water in the colder waters. But this is, when you're talking in terms of cold water, early season, late season topwaters, buzzbait and a walking topwater are the only two you need. Also, guys, I'll put that Tackle Warehouse link of mine in the description if you guys would like to get you some of these or check them out. Now, let's talk about late winter, when the water temperatures are still cold and they're starting to warm up. Now, this is a completely different scenario there as far as the mood and the personality of the bass, because in the late winter, like we have right now, you're going to have a lot of fish that you can catch on top water under the right conditions in that cold water all over the lake. They're basically just going down the bank. You might catch one on a point, you might catch one on a parallel on the bluff bank, you might catch one in the back of a cove, you might catch one just anywhere. They're in the fall time of the year, late winter or late fall, early winter, they're roaming everywhere, and you can actually just cover water and catch them. But it's different when you're talking about February, March, when the water temperature is colder. Now, when that water temperature starts to get in the low 50s, 52, 53 degrees, something like that, and you've got some stable weather a little bit, you've got maybe a cold front on the way, let's say the air temperatures are maybe 10 to 15 degrees above normal, maybe you have an unseasonably airflow coming in, and that water temperature has made a pretty rapid rise. It's completely different than the late fall, because what happens is, let's say for example, and this is the best on guys on an off-colored water lake. The early season top water is better if you have water visibility under 3 feet. Doesn't work that good in clear water because clear water warms up a lot slower. But if you've got a lake that has under 3 foot of visibility, and let's say the water temperature has been 48, 49 degrees for a while, then you get this warming front comes in for 4 or 5 days. Water temperature shoots up to 52, 53, maybe 54 degrees. It could be late February, it could be March, depending upon what part of the country. The big fish will move up super shallow almost immediately to take advantage of that sun warming that shallow water, because the shallow, dirty water heats up a lot quicker. So that water temperature will warm up a lot quicker than the main lake. and those fish are ready to move up. It's pre-spawn, they're wanting to get shallow, and all it takes is for that water temperature to hit 52, 53 degrees. And once again, it's the buzzbait. And what you need to look for is get super shallow, get on the flat banks, like in the back ends of the coves or the back 2/3 of the coves. If you have a lake that has shallow grass, it's even better. Shallow grass, lily pad stems. A lake like Ross Barnett in Mississippi would be a perfect example of an early season cold water buzzbait lake. That you're using the same thing, guys, the big buzzbait, barely gurgling along the surface. Cold water, they definitely like black better in the early spring, and then some type of a shad pattern in the late fall. But they'll bite it in, again, 52, 53 degree water. So that is probably when we're talking about the video as far as the coldest water they're going to bite it in, that's about it, guys. 52, 53 degrees is about as cold as you're going to catch many fish. Now, I'm not saying you could catch one if the water temperature is 47. If there's a fish chasing a shad out up on the surface, he might hit a topwater lure. I've heard of guys catching them on a popar in the middle of the winter at Table Rock. I've never done it. But for me, once that water temperature starts getting below 52 degrees, my topwater goes, I put my topwater box up and do something else. But anyway, if you're wanting to catch cold water topwater fish, get you a big buzz bait, a walking bait, fish them both really slow, and you can catch some quality fish doing that. Because one of the good things about cold water topwater fishing, the average size of the bass that you catch is a lot bigger than any other time of the year. I bet the average size buzzbait fish I catch when the water temperature is in the low to mid 50s is at least 3.5 pounds, maybe even closer to 4. It's a good way to catch quality fish. So hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.